Did you know that one word Paul frequently uses is weak? I don't mean that the word he uses is not strong. I mean, he uses the actual word weak a lot. When I figured that out, I thought, I'm not sure I want to read Paul because I hate being weak. And that's too bad for me because I've got a lot of weaknesses. For one, I'm a bit of a control freak. I mentioned that to a friend the other day. I said, you might not know this, but I really like to be in control of things. My friend looked at me and said, John, everybody who knows you knows that about you. And I was like, is it that bad? And he said, yeah, it's that bad. Another weakness I have is that I worry a lot. I'm really trying to overcome this, and I'm better today than I was a few years ago, but I still worry. Are my kids doing okay? Will we have enough money for that thing we really want? Did the person who just gave me a high five wash his hands recently? There's lots to worry about. What about you? Do you have any weaknesses? Maybe you're trying to be kinder in how you talk about others. You're at a party, eating chicken, drinking Sprite, someone mentions the Thompson family, and once again, you're tempted to gossip. Or you might struggle with fear, worry that your happy ending isn't going to come true. Maybe you have a physical weakness that causes you pain. Your weakness could be a struggle to forgive others, or even God, for things that have happened to you. Or maybe it's some hard trials you've been experiencing for what feels like forever. We all have weaknesses. In fact, the Apostle Paul had weaknesses. Paul wrote, "To keep me from becoming proud, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and keep me from becoming proud. 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away." We don't know what this thorn in the flesh was, but it was definitely a weakness. It could have been a temptation or maybe a physical limitation. Perhaps Paul struggled with his eyesight, or it might have been an emotional ailment. Whatever it was painful to Paul. He might have felt, God, if you would just take this away from me, I could do so much more to build up your kingdom. Have you ever felt that way? God, if I didn't have to worry about money, I could focus so much more on the church's humanitarian program. Or Lord, if I didn't have an injured foot, I could stand by the door of the chapel and fellowship people as they came in. Or God, if this temptation were no longer a part of my life, I could be a more faithful saint. Paul didn't just ask the Lord, he begged the Lord to remove this weakness. And he didn't only beg one time either. He begged on multiple occasions, take away my weakness. But the Lord didn't get rid of Paul's weakness. Even though Paul continually pleaded for it to be taken away, he wrote, each time I asked, take away this thorn, the Lord said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. Paul continues, so now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Think about Christ's statement to Paul. My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. Is that really true? Does Christ's power really work best in weakness? Well, I guess he chose Abraham, a young man with an abusive dad, to become the father of many nations. And he chose a prisoner named Joseph to prevent starvation in Egypt. And he chose Moses, a man slow of speech, to talk to Pharaoh. He also told Gideon to reduce his army to 300 and helped a foreign widow named Ruth start a royal bloodline. So yes, the Lord does like to work through weaknesses. In fact, Paul tells us that Jesus was crucified in weakness, but now lives by the power of God. There's an interesting phrase you sometimes hear in the software industry. It's not a bug, it's a feature. Or it's a feature, not a defect. This phrase means that sometimes something that seems like a bug or a defect is actually an intended feature. For example, imagine your banking app requires you to authenticate using a code texted to you every time you use it. You could see that as a defect because it slows you down in accessing the app. But the app developers might see it as a feature because it helps keep your account safe. As another example, consider the website Wikipedia. It's the largest reference work in the history of the world, and it's almost entirely written by volunteers. 20 years ago, somebody might have said, an encyclopedia that anyone can edit? What a terrible idea. But the open source nature of Wikipedia has made it one of the most visited websites in the world. Allowing anyone to edit articles was a feature, not a defect. I mention all of this because there's one phrase I hope you remember from this video. Weakness is a feature, not a defect. Weakness can help us draw closer to Christ and accomplish his work. Jesus said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. Weakness is a feature, not a defect. We can think of weakness as a general term for the fallen condition in which we live. God can also work through our individual weaknesses. It should go without saying that God can also work through our strengths. It should also be obvious that every weakness we have in life doesn't necessarily come directly from God. We live in a fallen world and plenty of challenges happen just because of mortality. But we can find strength when we remember that weakness is a feature, not a defect. One reason weakness is a feature is that it helps us avoid pride. Do you remember what Paul said? He wrote, "I was given a thorn in my flesh to keep me from becoming proud." Paul's weaknesses helped him stay humbled, and ours can do the same for us. Maybe weakness is also a feature because our weaknesses and those of others can help us learn valuable lessons. Elder David A. Bednar recounted being in a meeting that included President Gordon B. Hinckley and Elder David B. Haight, an apostle then aged 97 and in poor health. President Hinckley asked Elder Haight to say the closing prayer, but Elder Haight struggled to stand and offer the prayer. Elder Bednar recounts, after several attempts to rise to his feet, President Hinckley courteously said, "David, it's all right," suggesting, I believe, that it was permissible for Elder Haight to remain in his chair and offer the prayer. Elder Haight responded in a voice that was both firm and appropriate and said, "President, I must stand." There was simply no way that mighty apostle was going to sit as he communicated with his heavenly Father. So once again, Elder Haight worked to stand and was successful. I shall never forget the spirit I felt as I listened to Elder Haight pray. I hope on that occasion I was quick to observe a powerful lesson about the dignity and the humility that should always attend our prayers. That lesson only came to Elder Bednar because of weakness.
To see more videos like this one, simply search Seeking Jesus.